Yes, Tim Curry.
Do you have Prince Albert in a can? You do? Well, you better let the poor guy out.
Hilarious.
Hi, O'Brien. Do you want a balloon?
Oh God, not you too.
You'll float down there. We'll float down there. Yes, we do.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass on that. I'm gonna pass.
I'm not really enough for you.
Hello, welcome to Double Vision. My name is Ryan Burford, and today I'd like to talk about the It movies. It was a horror novel written by Stephen King in 1986. It received kind of mixed reception from critics, but it was such a unique story that it ended up becoming a hit. And much like any successful Stephen King novel, it got turned into a live adaptation. First, there was a two-part miniseries that aired in 1990 and starred Tim Curry as Pennywise. That too got mixed reception. And now, the adaptations have been taken to the silver screen with It in 2017 and It Chapter 2 in 2019. Those two got mixed reception. Regardless, both adaptations had lots of entertainment value, and I do genuinely enjoy both of them. So let's not waste any more time. I'd like to discuss the two films and determine which one is superior. No, don't make me do it. Don't make me compare somebody else to Tim Curry. It's Tim Curry! But Bill Skarsgård does do a pretty good job as Pennywise. Well, let's look at the main difference between these two. Tim Curry's clown is actually more like a clown. He throws balloons, he tells jokes, he has a creepy clown laugh. And if you didn't know he was a shape-shifting demon, you would have your guard down for him. That is, assuming you're not afraid of clowns, which is not the case for most of us. This creates a sharp contrast in character because he could be throwing blood-filled balloons at you while cracking off one-liners, and it's genuinely hilarious and scary at the same time. It's a really entertaining character to watch. Now, with the Bill Skarsgård clown, he feels more like a monster. He talks like a monster, he moves like a monster, and he just has an extremely dangerous presence around him. Since the recent two-part movies don't have the budget or TV program limitations of the miniseries, you see a lot more gore and you get a lot more scares. A good example of this is that in the original, when Georgie gets killed, you only see Pennywise grab his arm and that it does a dissolve effect on his teeth and then the scene ends. In the remake, you actually see the kid get his arm ripped off and then he struggles for his life just to ultimately be pulled in and killed. As much as I would have liked to see more of the new Pennywise be more like, well, a clown, he feels way more dangerous and therefore is a much scarier villain. He goes to much further lengths to scare and kill people. Tim Curry's clown just kind of makes people see scary things and then brag about how things float. This is gonna kill me to say it, but I'm sorry, Tim Curry, but the remake gets this point.
I'm terribly sorry, sir, but I'm afraid you're mistaken.
Now this category is going to be dealing with the adults and the kids collectively, but I'd like to analyze which adaptation did which age group better and determine the winner from there. So starting with the kids, I feel like the remake did them way better. The movie did a good job balancing the development of the individual characters as well as themselves as a group. It was done so well that by the end of the movie, I was genuinely concerned about them. The kids seemed like they were real kids and not like they were reading a script written by adults. They made jokes, they cussed a lot, they were curious, and they were innocent yet mischievous. Watching them and being a part of their story made you kind of feel like a kid yourself, and it was really cool. The miniseries just didn't reach that point. All the actors are fairly good, shout out to Seth Green,
Yes, I'd love some chocolate ass cream.
but the characters didn't seem to have the depth and realism of the remake. Now as for the adults, this one is a bit harder. Neither version really had the most interesting adult characters with the exception of Richie and Bill. Richie was played by Bill Hader in the remake and Harry Anderson in the miniseries. Richie kind of served as the comic relief for the group, but also had his share of emotional scenes and was one of the more three-dimensional characters in the group. Hader and Anderson's portrayal of this character are pretty even with each other, and they were genuinely funny, but you also really cared about them. Now, as for Bill, Richard Thomas did a pretty good job playing this character, but it shouldn't be a surprise that James McAvoy gave a much better performance. James McAvoy could read a Tommy Wiseau script and still deliver a good performance.
You must be kidding, aren't you?
Now, as for the groups as a whole, both groups really did feel like they were old friends, but I just felt the camaraderie was a little bit stronger in the remake. The remake focused more on the passing of childhood and what it was that brought them together in the first place. All in all, I did like the cast of the miniseries, but I just think that the remake was casted and written a bit better. So I award this point to the remake. So when I saw that the It remake was getting 2 movies, one for childhood and one for adulthood, I was definitely interested because the miniseries merges both childhood and adulthood into one linear story. When I saw the first It movie, I was actually very impressed, and my hopes were high for the second one. I just recently went to see the second one, and quite honestly, I was a bit disappointed. Having an ass-numbingly long runtime of 2 hours and 50 minutes, this movie is basically a rehash of the first movie, except with adults. They both have the group get together, they see visions from the clown, they have to conquer their fears, and they separate and get all mopey-dopey just to get back together. Hell, they even have the same theme of Bill having to accept Georgie's death by killing his vision of Georgie. The movie would have been fine if they scrapped the whole Native American ritual thing to gather childhood artifacts to summon Pennywise. If that all was cut out, it would barely even affect the story. It felt like it was just there to extend the runtime and give the movie its own separate 3-act structure. And that, right there, is why the miniseries flows a little bit better than the remake in terms of its story. The transitions between adulthood and childhood are usually pretty clever, and it does a pretty good job moving the story forward without losing focus. Another interesting thing I notice is that the kids in the original see visions that are based off of what happens to them in the previous scenes, feeding off their anxieties and their insecurities. And when they're adults, the visions they see have more to do with their childhood, attempting to bring them back to a place where they were just naive, scared little kids. Now in the remake, the visions the kids and adults see are strictly based off of their fears, which actually makes a bit more sense, considering fear is what he gains power from. Although the visions they see can be really goofy sometimes. I don't know if some of them were intentionally trying to get a laugh instead of being scary, but it was kind of entertaining, even if it is for the wrong reason. But at the end, I just feel like the original had the better story, so I award my final point to the original. But the remake still wins. It is an interesting story that leaves a lot of creative freedom open for filmmakers, and it's interesting to see how differently it can be executed. These two series may be based off the same book, but the differences between them are night and day. These both are very enjoyable, and it's just the perfect kind of corny Stephen King material that we all need in our lives. Who's to say if we'll get another reboot of the series years into the future, but as it is, I'm happy with what we got. With that said, thank you for joining me on Double Vision, and I will see you all in the next episode.